Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome back to Adventure Capital, where we not only discuss the entrepreneurial journeys and adventures with founders who have raised capital on WeFunder, but also the different resource providers and mentors helping founders along the way. Huzzah! This week, we were delighted to interview the Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp, Melissa Rosenthal, one of the first employees at BuzzFeed and a member of the founding team at Cheddar TV. Melissa drops a wealth of wisdom on the importance of building brands that are playful, fun, and human, even in the B2B space. WeFunder Gang, take it away.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Adventure Capital. Jonny Price here on the WeFunder team with Katie Powers. And today we are delighted to be joined by Melissa Rosenthal, the Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp. Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here for the second time.
And
there it is.
Should actually say welcome for the second time to Melissa, not because we're having her back for a second published episode recording like we did with Kelsey from Dope recently, but rather because the first time we chatted with Melissa, Jonny managed to forget to press the record button. And so, Melissa, a special thanks for the generosity of your time to do this 2 times. Katie has been blaming the screw up on her absence from the first conversation. So I think we know
wait. Katie's been blaming. I think Jonny's been blaming me, but it's okay. We're back at it.
Yes.
It's going to be even better.
I see the little
yes.
red dot.
Can't wait.
I know we're official now.
The red dot is on. I think this was maybe a career low for me. I one time CC'd someone on an email inadvertently where I was kind of mocking them when I was 23. And I vividly remember how I felt at that moment. This could have been an even lower moment of my career. So seriously, Melissa, thank you
Jonny,
so much for being willing
I could have been
like
Tim Cook or Bob Iger. So, it could have been worse.
Yes. Well, thank you for your time. And yeah, hopefully second time around, the conversation and dialogue will be even more amazing and engaging. So let's crack on with that. Melissa, let's start by, you've had a really awesome career, background, incredible growth at BuzzFeed, and then Cheddar, and now ClickUp. So would love for you to maybe just start by kind of walking us through your kind of career today and how you ended up as Chief Creative Officer at ClickUp.
I'm happy to share. So I'm definitely kind of a very much a challenger mindset, builder at heart. So I'm always eager to find an opportunity that I can feel like I'm disrupting an industry or shaping something that hasn't been done before and really kind of challenging the status quo. So it's a little bit about my personality that I think kind of led me down the career path that I've had. BuzzFeed was, basically a hobby for me. I started there when there were 9 people. And, the reason that I actually ended up there was that I was spending most of my nights and weekends on the site as a community user, trying to figure out virality and tracking content that I was creating across the web, and kind of, nights and weekends just experimenting with that led to an internship there, which then led to, me leading a very large global team. But, there was something about learning how people consumed content and shared content and why they did that, and playing into emotions that was really kind of this, how do we crack the code? And it was working with a really cool group of people that we were basically kind of, figuring out what, virality meant and what the internet was, and what media was at that stage. So it was a pretty exciting journey to be able to really kind of figure that out and, see progress. And, what you don't see is just thousands of hours and experiments kind of behind the doors that allow for that to actually happen. And then to be able to build, that company into a household brand name. So, seeing it referenced in television shows and all of that was kind of the work of this core team that really was able to build it. So, it was an amazing experience building ClickUp's brand and working with other advertisers to create, this native advertising model that we built on the heels of kind of how we saw content work and how we created, creative across advertising. So that was my first career move. And then after BuzzFeed, me and the old president of BuzzFeed decided to capitalize on a really interesting trend that we saw happening across cable television, which was that young people, mostly millennials, were cutting the cord with cable because it's crazy and outdated and very expensive, and it doesn't give you choice or control. And all of these OTT, connected TV systems were popping up, where people really finally had that control, where they could unbundle and be able to create their own kind of basically, media entertainment stack. So we decided to build a live network based on both that technology trend and then also the fact that, content for young people, the competitors were CNBC and MSNBC, and it was very like old school people that they would have on. And there was no one like talking about all these startups raising money and all these really amazing companies that were innovating faster than any of these like, these kind of behemoths. So that kind of mix of need for content and technology, and that being that moment, we felt like it was the right time to kind of build this network. So we built this network and scaled it, very quickly and sold it eventually to a cable company, as things as ironic as that is. But so what led me to ClickUp was this kind of this combination of a lot of the brand building and way of building content that I had learned at BuzzFeed. What resonates, how do you tell stories, and then also kind of this ClickUp solves for a lot of the problems that I was dealing with at both of these companies, which kind of siloed workflows, and a company that I can really stand behind and helps people become more productive, but also kind of has this really unique vision and I would say, feel to it aesthetically was really great. I felt like the grass was really green, and there was a huge opportunity to, build a very differentiated brand from kind of what else was out there, very similar to what we did at BuzzFeed and Cheddar, but for B2B SaaS, which was really exciting.
Yeah, super cool. Really interesting background as such a leader and a founder in the media space, and now making this switch to tech. Can you give the listeners just a high level overview? What is ClickUp?
Yeah, absolutely. So ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity platform. So we enable people to have all of their work in one place and have high level visibility across teams, what everyone is working on, make people's lives easier, make work more efficient, make people more productive and effectively, allow them to get more done, whether that's give them time back or more time to work on projects. But, I have so many amazing examples of kind of how we've used it and how other companies have used it, but it really is, the mission is like, why spend so much time using different systems where there's no kind of visibility or transparency across what different teams are working on, when you can have everything in one place, all of your docs, your goals, your whiteboards, everything that you do on a daily basis for work can live within the same platform. So that's our mission and our vision.
It's kind of a pretty crowded space. I feel like there's a lot of startups kind of and companies like innovating in this kind of work productivity space.
Yeah.
How do you guys, I guess this is where you and your creative team comes in, but how do you, one of the ways that you can differentiate, but how does ClickUp differentiate versus your competitors?
Yeah, there's two sides of that. I would say certainly our marketing is different. On the product side, I think there are many companies within the space, but there are few companies that are as bold as we are, saying we will replace all of your other existing work applications, which is the ultimate vision for the company. I would say the ultimate goal is to become the Salesforce of productivity, which is what we are actively trying to accomplish every day with all of our releases, where you really have no need to go anywhere else for work. So, that takes time, that takes ripping and replacing and also adoption across multiple teams within a company. But we can see that actively happening. And it's really kind of figuring out those pain points across the entire organization rather than focusing on a specific team, like a marketing team or HR. It's really like, well, how do you, when marketing is working with HR, how do you make sure that they're working within the same system, which is challenging, but that's the vision, and that's what we're trying to do every day on the product side. How do we kind of make that more efficient, make that teamwork easier within the same place, which is also, you're building for different teams. It's challenging. You want to be something that, every single team, regardless of size, regardless of segment, can use, whether it's like 1 or 10,000 people. So that's the ultimate goal on the product side for us.
That's cool. And, you think about this with respect to like business models, right? So it's like Uber, the more drivers there are, the better it is for passengers. The more passengers there are, the better it is for drivers. Same with WeFunder, right? Two-sided marketplaces, network effects, where it's like more founders better for investors, more investors better for founders. And you can kind of say the same thing, I guess, about like more kind of apps and, kind of tools, like internal kind of productivity tools there are in a company and like across different departments. There's kind of network effects from like, centralizing all of them, across functions and across all the different kind of tools and apps that are out there. There's kind of network effects that come from that over time.
I mean, I would say it starts out becoming a huge, it's like, first you have a very small suite of tools that everyone is using, right? That's sort of kind of how it started. And then all of a sudden you have,
it proliferates.
Yeah. And every, and you have a ton of different tools that the whole company is using. And then all of a sudden, like, you start to see that marketing teams have different tech stacks than their HR.
Yeah.
Right?
And they don't talk to each
other. Right, exactly. So I think, that's kind of like where we are now, where there's like different siloed work, tech stacks within teams, which is what we're trying to solve for.
Can I put a product request in for a tool, a ClickUp tool that like automatically records as Zoom conversation in future podcast recording?
I'll put it in Canny for you, no problem.
Yeah, we'll switch all of our future recordings to the ClickUp podcast system, automatically records, no challenges. Love that. Cool. I know you said you had dozens of examples, but do you have like a really cool use case of a company you guys work with that has just like totally adopted ClickUp and they've become much more efficient?
Yeah. I mean, I would say one kind of interesting example would definitely be the Padres, the San Diego Padres. So
cool.
So we have a partnership with them, for full transparency, but, and it started out with their very small IT team using ClickUp. And what happened was they actually loved the product so much that, they started to kind of shop it within the entire organization. And now we have, a few hundred people using it within the org. So I think, it's like that's kind of the virality, like the viral coefficient of the product, which is kind of the best case scenario when you have one team using it. And they're like, wow, that team is so much more efficient. They're able to do all of this within this platform. And then that person becomes the champion of the product and is able to kind of like go within other teams within the org and be like, you should be using this, because not only will it make your team more efficient, but it'll make our working relationship more efficient because we can both be working in this together. So, I mean, that's one of a few examples, but it's just kind of like, that's this interesting, like a viral coefficient that we've seen where, it's not even us going in top down. It's like the company bottoms up, where like all of a sudden, like you have people that are champions within the company now, trying to, create adoption within their own org because it helps them.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting because like, I know I've been, approached as you are for like new software things to try out. And there's just like such a momentum, and maybe I don't think I'm different in this regard, but there's such a like shift that you have to undergo. Like you have to just say like, okay, I might, lose out on my productivity for this week that it'll take me to get used to, the ClickUp stack or whatever it is. So what are like, is that your biggest challenge with finding new teams? Like what's kind of your way to overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's actually a great point. I think, yeah, adoption with anything, like the more you have it and the more you have to do it within in an organization, it's like, it's hard, right? It's like if you're constantly having to learn new tools and new products, like you're spending time doing that rather than working. So yeah, I mean, adoption is definitely something that like probably all companies like struggle with. I would say that, you know, the best way to do that is create the resources, both like within the onboarding process and then externally, that they can use and utilize to be able to feel like they can do this really quickly. I would say also, like, you know, when you think about, you know, if it's a week of time to really onboard that team, you know, after that it's kind of smooth sailing. They're able to really like operate themselves. So yeah, there's definitely the time to ramp up, but once you're ramped, you know, you're so much more efficient. And we're hopefully creating a lot of those materials through our content, through our video. We have ClickUp University, which is now kind of our, you know, our 101, 102 for how advanced, how, you know, if you're intermediate, beginner, to help you onboard and create. I mean, the beauty and the challenge with ClickUp is the fact that it's like, it's as simple and as complex as you want it to be. So, you know, it could be you can have a very simple layout, but you can also have like a ton of automations, a ton of click apps turned on. You can basically, you know, be inputting a ton of data from a lot of other different systems into ClickUp, and using that really as your like functional CRM or your database. So, you know, I think it might be overwhelming for some people if they kind of look at it that way. But if you start out with like, hey, I just want to use this for a simple use case, you can do that too. So it's you know, it's one of those products where there's kind of both ends of it. It's simple, and yet it can get, you know, increasingly complex, but we try to mitigate that with all of the tools and resources that we give our customers and users.
And that's obviously a huge part of where you come in, and that's a nice segue to your role. So, you know, your title is Chief Creative Officer. What is the Chief Creative Officer? Like, what kind of remit do you have at ClickUp? And also curious, like, how that interacts with like Chief Marketing Officer. Like, you know, is there also a Chief Marketing Officer?
Yeah. So, I mean, effectively, like, as Chief Creative Officer, I am Chief Brand Officer. Everything that touches the ClickUp brand, you know, comes from my team, touches my team in some capacity. So, you know, we have our in-house creative agency that touches all of design, all of, you know, social, it's the voice, it's the, you know, the design, the images, the performance marketing, all of that is, you know, motion graphic, all of that is coming from my team. So effectively, like anything that you feel or interact within the world of ClickUp outside of the product itself, is a result of kind of my team and what we're working on day to day. So the answer to that with kind of in regards to, we don't have a Chief Marketing Officer, we have a Chief Growth Officer. So we work very closely with him. So he's, you know, he's the distribution arm effectively of kind of all of the things that we're creating, especially on the
does kind of sales roll up to growth, or is there a separate kind of sales function outside of growth?
Nope. There's a sales function outside of growth.
Got it.
We're all like functional partners effectively in kind of what we do and how we support each other.
Got it. And community, is that like, does kind of community sit within you, or is that like another function?
That is another function. Social sits within my team because you know, there's a big difference between like, you know, user community and then social, where social is kind of the voice that you're going to try to see what productivity tips we have, or you're going to come to us to talk about an issue that you're having, or, you know, it's really where the brand can, I think, shine through the personality, the tone of who we are, which is a lot of kind of the other content that we create as well. So that sits under me, but then community is its own team.
Yeah, it's something we're kind of grappling with, right? As we grow WeFunder, it's like, you know, there's kind of business development, and then there's marketing, and then there's kind of brand, and then there's community, and then there's kind of more kind of producty, you know, or kind of metrics driven growth. And it's, well, not metrics driven, but you know what I mean, kind of like I guess kind of data driven, or like an A/B testing type driven growth. And yeah, like thinking about how all those kind of areas play together and interact in the org chart, and how that changes over time as you scale. It's like really interesting to just see how other companies
we've gone from, you know, 70 to 800 people in a year and a half. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
you can imagine
crazy.
like things change frequently. I mean, I'm used to that. Like I've been at kind of high growth startups before, but yeah, it's constantly kind of evaluating where things sit. You don't want someone overseeing too much to the point where they're not focused on it, which is always a challenge. Like community needs like nurturing, right? Like you need someone dedicated to that. You need someone that is like building that and nurturing it. And there are programs that I put in place earlier that I still have a touch point on, but I can't spend time nurturing that and building it and scaling it. So we hand it off, which I think is like the beauty of kind of where when you get to build something and then hand it off to another team, and you're not the owner of it anymore. I think like a lot of people, as they scale, they're like, that's a very hard thing for them to like let go of like their baby emotionally. But I think it's actually like such a great sign, right? It's like something that has been built and is great enough that the company values it to scale it, to move it somewhere else, that it can be really nurtured and built up. I see that as like a huge kind of like benefit of building and scaling, because then you have someone else that can really own it and kind of take it to the next level, rather than kind of you're splitting your time between now 100 different things.
Yeah. It's super interesting. Like we've scaled quite a bit in the last year, and I thought it was a lot, but it's nowhere near the number.
Yeah.
The number.
We thought we were growing quick.
I would say like that type of growth is like extremely rare. I mean, I haven't seen our growth at any other company, not in the amount of time. It was mostly over a few years, but as you guys mentioned, like the space is very competitive. Like we are growing at such a fast rate that we need to hire certain roles to keep up with it, and to be able to execute on certain initiatives and go to market motions that we want to. And also we're now in EMEA and APAC, and we have a presence there, and we're building out our go to market strategies, so that requires a whole other set of hiring. So it's kind of just natural to the market that we're in, and what we need to do to be able to really compete with the others.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You guys are all on ClickUp. You're extremely productive in that scale that supported your growth, most likely.
That's what I'll say. That we're able to scale to that because we use ClickUp.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Your systems are taken care of. Yeah. What would you say? I mean, I'm sure the challenges for the company overall were different than just the challenges for the creative team that you run. Can you speak a little bit to both? Like, what were some of these the biggest challenges that ended up coming out of this rapid growth trajectory?
I mean, I think you're never like fully ready for the scale and the growth that you take on. So you take on a lot of like, I would say, growth debt, which just means like you're never refining processes or things fast enough to keep up with the amount that the rate that you're growing. So it's just like technical debt, right? Like you're growing too fast, you're building very fast, like you're going to always have like technical debt. And I would say like you have growth debt as well.
That's a cool phrase. I never actually had, it probably exists, I don't know, but maybe this is why you're a chief creative officer, but I actually don't know if I heard that phrase growth debt before. I really like it. What are some examples of like...
I kind of just came up with that on the spot. I mean, I think
there you go.
I should have said that. I guess I coined it now on here, right? It's like
TM, growth debt, TM, Melissa Rosenthal, ClickUp. You heard it here first. Another word first on the Venture Capital podcast. But yeah, what's some examples of that growth debt? Take two.
That growth debt. I mean, so it's not like you want to over like process certain things, but when you don't have process in place for certain pieces of your organization, like, I mean, even like, making sure that when we do events, we have the right platforms and marketing ops and leads that we can connect, and make sure that we're able to qualify leads. Like there's just so many things that go into like all of the different functions, that there are pieces of that are then missing, or that you have to kind of rip out and replace because they don't now kind of meet the scale that you're at. So like then you're kind of working backwards, and you have all these people in house that are ready to go, but then they have to take time to rip out and replace what they're using kind of on their side, right? So I think that the growth debt is more like, their tech stack, and then process and like, existing tech stack that both don't scale to where you need to be when you've kind of hired this quickly. So I guess those would be two examples of kind of like where it messes up. I mean, even for us, like we kind of built our, like I feel like fortunate. Like I kind of knew what I needed to do when I came in to be able to execute when the company got bigger. I didn't know we'd get this big this fast, but like to be able to build out like that services arm, like there are a lot of initiatives that we come up with, but there are also a ton of initiatives and things that we support from across the entire organization. So when you go from supporting an organization of 60 to supporting an organization of 800, you know, there are processes in place that like aren't scaled for that. And, you know, our team is not going to like double and triple and quadruple. Like we need to stay lean and then be able to support all of those functions. So then it's kind of building out like our ability to scale that. And how do we do that? And like, you know, it's just so that was my debt, I guess. But, you know, it depending upon the team, but you're always going to have that if you scale that quickly. I don't think there's a way to avoid it.
So obviously like you guys are growing incredibly quickly, like, and so it's like awesome job, Melissa and team, you know, clearly the creative team is like, you know, can take a lot of kind of accolades for that growth. I'm a pretty kind of metrics driven person, probably to a fault sometimes, where I'm like too focused on numbers. Katie's like laughing.
What gets measured gets managed.
What gets
Jonny's
measured gets managed.
Catchphrase.
Yeah, sadly I can't claim to have coined that one. Peter Drucker I think coined that one, but yeah, that's like my go-to management maxim. But I'm always kind of trying to figure out, okay, how much of that growth over the last year and a half you know, was driven by, you know, sales, or was driven by kind of growth hacks, or was driven by product improvements, or was driven by the market, or was driven by, you know, creative. Like, do you guys care about trying to, you know, claim that kind of attribution, or kind of, you know, or is it just like, look, if it's all moving in the right direction, like we're all kind of contributing in different ways, we don't need to like know kind of who is driving what percentage of that growth. As long as things are moving in the right direction, we're all kind of, you know, happy, and let's just keep doing more of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix and a balance of both. Like, you know, you're going to be able to tell like how you're driving growth across sales. And there, you know, there's certainly things that we measure on the content and the creative side that know that we're driving growth. Like we know that we've built our brand awareness and our key geos from, you know, less than 2% to over 8%. So, you know, we can attribute a lot of that growth to like core numbers, you know, specifically. But again, like I don't think you grow this fast, or you're able to, without like all of your go-to-market motions like function, you know, firing on all cylinders. Like I think if you have a key missing piece, like you're not going to see that. So yeah, I mean, we certainly measure across every, you know, go-to-market initiative that we have, and make sure that we're tracking in the right direction. Again, like, you know, it's quantitative, but some of it's also qualitative. Like, you know, like peripherally that we're selling and closing deals because we have a pretty robust out-of-home strategy, or people have seen our ads and some of them are going viral. And, you know, there's obviously like first touch attribution that doesn't capture like a true consumer journey, which you have to understand isn't like the reality of that. Like they could hear you on a podcast and they can see you on a billboard, and then someone recommends them and it's word of mouth, and that's their third touch. But YouTube will get credit for that, or nothing will get credit for that. So, you know, I think there's like elements of it that you can capture, and there's always going to be the parts that you can't. I'm speaking, you know, specifically for like that marketing creative side, and brand specifically, you know, but also if you're looking at it as like, hey, we're building this as a 10 to 20 year brand, like where we want to become the Salesforce of productivity. There are investments that you make early on that, you know, you'll see pay dividends in the future, which we did. You know, like should we have spent the money that we spent on out of home immediately? I mean, a lot of companies probably wouldn't have done that, but that was something that we knew that would pay off in 2 years, and we've seen that. So I think there's bets that you can't measure like the impact immediately that you take often, and then there are things that of course that you're able to measure daily, you're able to measure weekly, and it's just a balance of all of those different, you know, key you know, executions and key kind of go-to-market initiatives. For sure.
Yeah, I think a really good example of what you're just saying, Melissa, is the fact that I drive into work every day across the Bay Bridge. I see the ClickUp billboard. all the time. And like, how would you guys ever, measure the fact that my eyeballs landed on that billboard and I now like have the brand recognition of ClickUp and have gone and looked it up and all of these things. So yeah, I'm sure that comes up a lot in your work. Do you have examples of other pieces of content that you're really proud of that your team designed and put out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, the out of home strategy was definitely a bet we took early on, and then we continued to kind of double down on that. I think, there's something to be said about placing your billboard next to Monday and next to Zoom and next to all of the other large enterprise companies when you're much smaller than them, that gives you legitimacy, and it's just a fact. So yeah, I mean, for sure we can't measure like every single I guess I would say like place where we're renting space in someone's mind, which I think is kind of actively what we're doing. When you do that, staying top of mind, there's a reason why Geico spends $1 billion a year on their out of home strategy. So I think there's something to be said about kind of like just staying top of mind always, especially like, when you're thinking about, oh wow, yeah, you're right, I just saw that company, they do project management, I should check it out. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the strategy we're definitely proud of and we've become known for, and which is kind of weird. It's just like cool. It's billboards, but it's cool. Yeah.
On the Geico thing, my son really loves like lizards and stuff, and whenever he sees a Geico billboard, he's always like, look, the lizard.
Yeah.
So
when
it's
he's
working,
ready to get car insurance, it's that lizard.
There you go.
Top of mind.
Yeah, he's probably going to bug me to get car insurance from Geico because he wants to see more of the lizard. We actually have some WeFund billboards that are coming out soon that we're really excited about. So yeah, glad to know we have your endorsement of this WeFund out of home strategy. One, I think you're talking about like, B2B SaaS marketing at ClickUp. You're coming from a background of consumer at BuzzFeed and Cheddar. I'm just kind of curious, like the overlaps and the parallels and the kind of lessons that you learned at BuzzFeed and Cheddar and how you're applying them to ClickUp, which seems like, on the surface, it's like, oh, it's totally different, kind of sales process or like customer journey. So what are the kind of parallels and lessons that you've applied from earlier in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of this like delight and joy, like find delight and joy in kind of your in marketing and like
work from home videos, or the return to work videos, I should say, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if you can capture someone's like emotional attention, you're in a really good spot. And I think there's like a way into people's brains, and it's sometimes through their hearts. And I think if you can make someone laugh or capture their attention in a meaningful way, you have that door opening that you might not have had if they're just kind of scrolling through something and it's just another ad that looks like another ad that looks like another ad. So what we bring and what we try to bring to all of our marketing and advertising is that that personality. And I talk about personality a lot because I don't really see that mentioned in SaaS, but I think personality is kind of everything that you touch and interact with or come across from a brand or from a product. And our personality is our branding. Our personality is our social voice. It's our performance marketing. It's our social content. So, I think there's a lot that kind of creates that personality, and it's definitely a lot of kind of what I learned from the early days at BuzzFeed, for example, where it's like, well, emotional, like why do things resonate with different people? And it's like it's there's pain point solution here, but it's like, okay, how do we then take that like framework of emotional resonance and apply that to how we can market with B2B? And it's it's not as different as you would I think people are like, well, that's a completely different thing. And I think more B2B companies should kind of try to create their marketing as like B2C companies and just apply as necessary. It's like, putting a puzzle together, basically. It's like, okay, emotion is humor. How do we apply that to an engineering, ad where we need to talk about the pain points that engineers deal with, right? I mean, they're people too. Like we want to make them laugh and capture their attention in an interesting and unique way, because everyone else is also trying to do that. Like, the fact that it's so hyper competitive and you have a ton of products that are going after the same market. Like if you're not differentiated, it's challenging. So
Totally.
I think, and also just another thing to like think about is just the state of technology as it stands, and the fact that you have a ton of no code solutions where people can spin up an app, a product in the amount of time now that would have taken years, like years ago, and they can do that in the matter of months. So I think when you think about like where we are with technology, feature parity and kind of like that competitive space, it's even more competitive because people are able to do that. So, the differentiator here is brand, and it's standing out. It's content, it's brand, it's top of mind, it's great experience within the product, but then also market it in a really differentiated way. Like, I think that's kind of the perfect marriage. And that's definitely a lot of what I took from BuzzFeed. And then, at Cheddar, we created a logo that was a slice of cheese. The company was called Cheddar. The branding was hot pink and yellow. Like, it didn't look like CNBC or Fox Business, and we were next to them on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And we, when people would come by and we'd have all these like guests, they would like look at our set and be like, what is that?
I mean, like, people can't see this. They're listening. This is audio, not visual, but like behind you is, the ClickUp logo in like neon pink
colors
and purple and blue, and it's electric. And it's like, that doesn't look like a kind of a boring, like it needs Salesforce for productivity, but I feel like your brand is just literally in this case more electric than Salesforce.
It's funny though, like people, they'll be like, well, what happens when you go out market? What happens when you're focused on enterprise? And like when you look at Salesforce, like their marketing is based around like woodland creatures. Like they've got like,
and like Dreamforce is kind of cool, and there's
so they've got Jay-Z performing next to a big bear. So like when you're talking about that, like I think they get a pass because they're so massive. Once you have a $200 billion market cap, I guess it's just like, well, you've done it, you've succeeded, so no matter what you do, it's like accepted. But I think like when you look at that, like that company has a personality. Like they've developed very, very strong branding based on characters, based on mascots, and it's not just this very stiff, rigid company. So I think there's ways to do that as you go up market, and I don't think it really changes that much. I think it's just kind of like perfecting and becoming a little bit more like ironed out, and making sure that everything is kind of like a little more buttoned up and together and cohesive. But I don't think like the creativity within the company and within the brand needs to change. I think if anything, it becomes more important.
For sure. I really loved that one-liner, engineers are people too. they also have emotions. And I mean, I genuinely do think that that's like a good, takeaway. And it's something we deal with a lot at WeFunder. Like, we're industry agnostic. We work with all types of startups. We like to say from coffee shops to flying cars. And some people are just so naturally like great at connecting with their audience, and their campaign page reflects that. They're like very genuine and authentic, and it incites emotions when you go and you look at their offering, and there's just like no way you can leave that page without being a part of what they're building. And then there's other companies that maybe are more B2B, and they struggle with delivering the same level of pull that some of these companies that are just naturally better at it, or maybe they're more B2C and it's kind of been built out. But we're sort of like rebranding, I guess, what we offer into this concept of a community round, where any company can come and raise capital from their customers and community and kind of let them in on this growth journey of building a startup, and in return sort of giving back to their most loyal followers for helping them in achieving that growth. I feel like a lot of this is aligned with what you guys are doing in your building, and I'm just curious your thoughts on that concept, and if you have any sort of reflections on that piece.
I mean, I mentioned this to Jonny. First of all, I think it's a great idea. Like, I wish that kind of existed, when back in the day. Like, I think the fact that, having to be an accredited investor, which is like, the threshold of money that you need to have to actually invest in a company, is just like a weird and crazy concept where, like, if you've been a loyal customer or a loyal, follower of that company for a long time, and you can't invest in them or have a piece of that because you don't have enough money in the bank, makes like kind of zero sense, because I think the government says like what you don't have enough like control over your finances to be able to make a decision like that. So just on the concept itself, I think, that was pretty outdated, and the idea of like community-led rounds and community-led funding makes a ton of sense. I would say that, from the perspective of like creative and brand, I think that's actually where it makes a ton of sense, right? Like it's kind of, if you're going to effectively think about raising a round from your community, you have to have a lot of people that feel passionately about you. So passionate that they need to have a piece of the business, because at that stage, like, these aren't like probably very seasoned angel investors, and maybe you get a couple of those, but if they're users, it's because like they are emotionally attached to your product. And that probably comes from both using the product, but also the feeling that they get when they interact, which comes from the brand. So I think like, a lot of it is like that whatever the page ends up being is kind of this true reflection of like what the company feels like, and how they interact with people. And like when you work on that platform or you interact with them on social, like what is that feeling you get? And I think all of those things kind of probably bubble up to like, this is how I feel about that company, and I'm so invested in them that I'm going to actually invest in them. Mostly just cool. The things that I would have been really compelled to invest in were things that I am so deeply passionate about. And why am I passionate about them? Because like there's an emotion behind that passion. So I think you need to spark that. And just to kind of go off of the engineers or people too, I think like so often like B2B companies are just like so focused on like persona marketing, and they're like the persona, and it's like, yes, the persona is a person, like it's a real person. And we just like caught up in terminology that takes away the humanization of like the people that you're actually marketing to, and the fact that they're people. And I think like bringing that back is like really important, because at the end of the day, people are making decisions, not like personas.
And it goes the other way too, right? Like I think you guys do a really good job of peeling back the curtain of the ClickUp team and what you guys are about, and that helps lend to the authenticity that you put out into the world. But so many people I think are afraid to show that like they're the founder, like to even talk about the company, and that goes so far with your audience, like to see the human building this. It's a great story, and it's a great way to make a connection.
I mean, part of the reason, like, Zeb is an amazing CEO. He's like both like, a great leader, a great boss, but also like an incredible product visionary. But you walk into an interview with Zeb and he's dressed in this like really vibrant shirt, and I'm like, well, this is awesome. Like you get to work with this and like build off of this for your brand. And it's just like that makes it all the more kind of compelling, because he's of course a part of the brand. He built this company. So to have someone so vibrant, and that was also like that clicked for me, because it really felt like, wow, there's like, this is the person leading it. There's so much opportunity even within building his brand and having him communicate and showing who he is and how he thinks about the world. And he does that regularly, and I think it's great.
Love it. That's really cool to hear your kind of enthusiasm for what we're trying to build at WeFunder with this community run concept, and letting your users, letting your customers, letting your community members invest. Thanks for sharing those thoughts. I guess one last question. We ask this of every one that comes on the podcast, but one piece of advice that you would have can be for a founder that's building a company, or as they think about, it doesn't need to be on kind of creative brand, but one piece of advice for it that you can leave us with.
I mean, I would just say like brand is really important, and like build brand early, because you will regret not building brand if you don't. Again, like we are in such a, a time where technology is just like democratized to the point where anyone can build anything. Like there are people out there that don't know code that are building like, full platforms, no code. So, if you think that like features are going to differentiate you in the long term forever, like I think that that's a mistake. I think, certainly superior product is a great way to build, product-led growth, but that gets you so far. And then you need to have other tools in your your arsenal to be able to kind of leverage that product-led growth into long-term sustainable growth, which is brand, which is staying top of mind. So I guess the TLDR of that is it's just never too early to think about like having that cohesive brand and tone of your content throughout everything that you're doing. Even writing blog posts, like how do you make those stand out, right? How do you talk about your product in a different way? Remember, that was really funny. Like they really thought about that. Is it a line of copy when the product goes down? Is it a line of copy, when you download the app? Like there are such small, like nuanced things that you can do that help build brand, even if you don't have like a bunch of people in-house to create it, that I think, sometimes might be overlooked, but it's just as important as building the product.
I love that. That was a great note to wrap up on. Melissa, thank you so much for your time again. It is still recording, so hopefully this time will actually be an episode. And yeah, for those of the listeners who want to learn more about ClickUp, it's just clickup.com. I see you guys have 24/7 support and lots of people probably doing demos. So check it out. Increase your productivity.
Yeah, please check out ClickUp, and thank you guys again for having me. This was fun for the second time.
Thanks so much for being so gracious, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Adventure Capital. I hope you laughed, took notes, shed a tear, and most importantly, feel ready to go off on your own adventure. And remember, whenever you're ready, WeFunder's here to help. Be sure to like and leave a review, gang.